When I ask any camp pro about their camp experience, they are full of stories. Rarely do they talk to me about insurance or prepping training. They're always talking about their stories. Today on the CampHacker podcast, we're going to talk about multiple memorable moments being mandatory. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I am a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant. I help camps translate what we do so that more families insist on sending their children to summer camp.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I am a social worker, and I am also the camp director at Camp Highlight, a sleepaway camp for children who have LGBTQIA+ parents and caretakers.
And my name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive female community while doing that in English and French.
My name is Joe Richards. I am the executive director at Pierce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility in Fingal, Ontario. And we are part of the United Churches Camping Network across Canada. And I am here.
Excellent. Good intro, Joe. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am welcome to a silly Thursday afternoon with the CampHacker crew. A few changes to the format, which will be revealed throughout the show today. But I wanted to talk about memories and have had occasion, including thanks to the Sherry Group being interviewed on their podcast, talking about special camp things that happened that I remember. Just got me thinking a lot about camp stories. As well, got some birthday messages from my camp director from when I was a kid, and from Ian McLean, who is my camp counselor that I talk about all the time, that made me feel noticed and appreciated when I didn't fit in anywhere, and how special that was to me to remember those two people were so influential. Made me think that I think we should talk about the intentionality about creating great memories at camp and really digging into that, because I think it's important. I think that we have done great things in this industry to professionalize and think about lots of really important childcare professional things. But at its heart, what I think makes camp successful are the stories and the memories. And so I wanted to really think this week about how we can be intentional about that. So I'm going to open it up by saying that I think that smart summer camp professionals like you know that camp memories are rarely made just at a taking tennis one day. They're made at taking tennis on the day when it gets silly, where the instructor dresses up and puts on a goofy accent, where something happens and everybody starts to giggle. Those are the things that we remember, that our kids remember. And I think that we can get better at creating those moments for them. And so I want to open up today with the three of you, your like one moment that really sticks out to you, whether it was as a staff member, as a director, whichever, but one of just your favorite camp memories. A number of episodes ago, we talked about your favorite moment of the day, but I wonder what your favorite camp memory is. I'll buy a bit of time by saying that I have classifications of favorite memories. I never remember what starts it, but I will tell you that my favorite moment in a year is sitting at a dining hall table and laughing till we cry. And I never remember what it's about, but I always remember the faces around and all of us laughing so hard. Those things mean so much to me, those moments. And I definitely I've been really blessed with lots of magical moments from summer camp, but wanted to think about what we can do to be intentional about that. Joe, what's your favorite camp memory?
The one that sprang to mind immediately when you asked that question, Travis, is when I was a first-year counselor, the theme was the Caribbean. I think something to do with the islands, and the night before theme day. So the way camp was set up, Kennesari was set up, is that we had theme day was every Thursday, and the night before, somebody came up with this idea out of the blue that was just like, you know what we should do? We should we should turn the dining hall into like a waterfall, like Caribbean island waterfall. And we all were like, okay, great. How do we do that? And we spent seemingly all night moving rocks from a rock pile at one end of camp into the dining hall. And somebody had bought, like, we had an old pool tarp. So we set it up, and somebody had somebody had like a pump, so we could pump water. And so one corner of the dining hall was turned into this waterfall. And then at some point that night, it's hard to believe if you're watching the video, but I had hair um, down to my neck, and somebody had braided my hair in very tiny braids, which may or may not be appropriate in today's world, but in 1989, 1990, totally fine. And I remember the following morning, my job was to stand outside of the hall and welcome people in, welcome to the island. And and the look on kids' faces was ridiculous. Like, they walked in through the door, and the whole dining hall had decorations, and there was this running waterfall in the corner that wasn't there at snack the night before. And it's just this memory of, as a young staff, what it taught me is that you can do anything, right? It's not a matter of saying, can we do this? It's a matter of saying, how can we do this, right? And it really shaped um my programming brain, and also shapes when people say we can't do that. I'm like, why not? Right? Like, it's just a great memory. Might be inappropriate now, but it was a great memory. I won't use all the accents, but
Clearly inappropriate now, but I appreciate the underlying sentiment of
Probably inappropriate then.
Well, true.
I want to point out that
Yes.
it suddenly become inappropriate,
Yeah.
but no. But I'm glad that sounds like an actual. I would love to have seen that. Do you have pictures of that, Joe?
I have no pictures of it because I didn't come from a family that was rich enough to have a camera.
Oh, all right. Well.
Mm. But your brother has access to the photo
that's
archives.
the thing about cameras. If you want luxury, you have to pay for it. You know what I mean?
Yes, that is it.
Excellent. Cap, how about for you?
I can't get the image of Joe out of my head at the moment. For me, it was I think it was more of a moment where a staff member, with our first year campers, we always call home about 72 hours afterwards just to give an update. And one of our unit heads was on the phone with a parent, and they clearly were having a very nice conversation, and the conversation had evolved off of the camper itself, and it was just pretty much talking about, I don't know, mundane things, but they were having conversation. And the unit head said to the parent, "I'm sorry, I have to get off the phone because I need to go to a balloon funeral." And she said it very seriously, and then she hung up the phone. And then another unit head said, "Did you just tell a parent that you're going to a balloon funeral?" And she was the section head of our youngest kids. And of course, one of our cabin groups had a balloon that they adopted, named. It has now deflated. They're very upset about it. They've organized a funeral and for this balloon. And that was the time that she was going to do it. And so the two unit heads started laughing, and then the entire office started laughing. And somebody was like, "You should call this parent back because, she doesn't know what you're talking about." And just everybody's tears were just, and because she said it so seriously, because she was like, "I really need to go. I have a balloon funeral to go to." Another person in the office ended up calling the family, just saying, like, "This is the situation. There's nothing negative that's happened at camp or anything like that." And the actual balloon funeral was amazing. Like, they had it in like one of the wooded areas of camp. Every single camper spoke. Campers looked like they understood each other. Our campers are French and English mother tongue, so often younger campers don't have full-on conversations with each other without at all understanding each other. So it was very sincere. But I think just that moment of people taking their job seriously, and they take what kids are going through seriously, but the ridiculous of it all. And it was just a tear fest in the office of uncontrollable laughter, and then us heading to the balloon funeral and somebody having to call a parent back and say, this is what we're doing. So it was a small little moment, but it was funny, and it was also really special.
Right. Very campy.
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
When you asked the question, I wasn't going to tell this story, but it is the first thing that came to my mind. Like, picture it sometime in the 90s. I was still young, and it was probably my first or second year at a 6-week camp. And I had a group of kids, and had been ramping up to the Olympics. We were doing the Olympics at the end, and it'd be like one cabin versus, we had floors then, but it was one floor versus another. And I'm a super competitive person, so I was like hyping the kids up the entire time, like, oh, we're gonna do it, we're gonna take the gold, like we are the best. But at the same time, the thing that I always work with the kids is like, we are a brotherhood. We take care of ourselves. We take care of ourselves, and we take care of each other, which is how we take care of ourselves. Our community is important. Like, always extend your hand, always be helpful. And, my kids were always the ones going around the dining hall, like helping kids out and everything. It was great. So the last week we had the Olympics, and we were doing well, and we got to the relay race, and, my kids were like killing it. And like between the second and the third leg, like Vincent like falls and like does like a full roll and slows him down and hands off the baton. And Paul grabs it, starts to take off, stops, turn around, helps Vincent up, and we lost. And they were so devastated, but I'm like trying to hold back tears because I couldn't believe that happened. And it's really like the roots of what I do now, as far as the curriculum that we use. This is why this comes to mind, and we're talking about making great memories, is that at that moment, I didn't understand how powerful the culture I created was. And I still can feel the sun on my neck in that moment, even all those years ago, like watching that, being amazed that this had come together in this way, that the message of taking care of each other had been so ingrained that it was the most important thing to them. And that is actually my favorite camp memory, because it was super instructive to me. And if it didn't happen quite that way, I don't know if Camp Highlight would be here today. And when you talk about like making memories, I think being super intentional is really important. Not so much about like fantastic like visuals, like Joe was talking about, but just also about all the other pieces, because we're giving these kids something internal that they're always working with. Anyway, when they came over, they were so devastated, but I was like, you guys won, and we're getting a pizza party and a McDonald's party, and McDonald's on top of pizza. It was really a moment. It's the proudest I've ever been, probably.
That is a beautiful, beautiful camp moment. So then I wonder what's important to creating an atmosphere that those kind of memories can happen. So if I pick apart the different things, and Joe started this off well with breaking his down, it's like we can accomplish great things because we put the time in. Chris, you set the tone with your campers so that a moment could happen. And Gab, I think that there's a comfort in that staff member in straight-facedly saying we're having a balloon funeral, because it's, because in her back of her head, what she didn't say, but she knew, is because it's important to these campers and it will make a difference to them. And they're all really important pieces to this. So I want to break this down. What do you think are important elements to a memorable moment that people will laugh about or think about, cry over, in years to come, years later, that people will be recalling those things? Again, I don't think, like, I have had amazing camp instructors in different activities, some who, like, I did a nature instructor when I was a counselor who just made me an environmentalist because she was so great. She changed me. My camp director that I mentioned at the beginning, he changed me the way I see the world. But I want to give people practical things.
Yeah, I think that when we're looking at this summer with our leadership team, what we're talking about a lot is that we're not trying to recreate past summers. We're trying to create the summer that our campers and our staff members need, and to really, really try to lock into what do they need right now. And I think that, with all of perhaps our stories, the common links is care. Joe lugging rocks, and to a dining hall, Chris taking the time to teach certain values. I think there's the always when care is the driving force behind any program that we're developing. I think that sort of is such a fuel, and campers and staff members feel that. And I think that with the summer that we're walking into, I think a lot of us want to hold on to some of those magical moments that campers have experienced and staff members have experienced in the past. And even maybe some of those programs that are those huge camp event programs. And my thought process behind it is not to try to recreate those in a way that's less than that program. It's to evaluate and say, is this what they need right now? And can we put pause on that program and revisit that program maybe in summers to come, but to set the expectations for our campers and our staff members that we're going to do amazing, amazing things. And it's not going to be the same necessarily as past years, but it's still the same people, and it's still the same people that care. And to allow your staff to sort of dream, what could that be? And what do our kids and staff need?
Yeah,
I know that everybody wants to talk on that one because it was so good, Gab. One of the things that I learned, Joanna Warren Smith did a big survey of people who did run last year, and she and I did a course in this fall about the lessons from that and how we can prep for the summer.
Right.
One of my biggest takeaways from that is that everybody who ran last year had to modify their program. They couldn't offer the big flashy things that their camp was used to. And a lot of people, one of the biggest modifications was that kids could not do individual programs. They had to be in a unit, and that unit had to stick together. And that was just a health requirement. The thing that was so strong coming out of the results of that survey is how appreciative those staff and campers were of getting to spend time with a focused group of people, getting to know them better. So those kids didn't get all of the jumpy, splashy, bus trippy kind of things that they had in the past, but they had an amazing summer because they focused on the small community.
Yeah.
They focused on the small group. And I think that is powerful. And you're talking about intention. I think that every camp can do that if they're intentional about building those small groups, making sure kids feel like they fit in, making sure that that they're a part of something in that small way.
I want to add to that intentionality. Intention is sort of like my watchword. If I ever write a book, it's going to be about intentionality in camping and in camp programming. I think if you want to create an environment where you get great memories, you have to be extremely intentional about that. And not necessarily like, oh, everyone's going to walk away with this with great memories, because that will just drive you insane. The intentionality, I mean, is around what your program is, like creating the environment and being really serious and genuine about it, and being very serious about whatever it is. Like if you do not take whatever values that you are sort of injecting into your camp program seriously, the kids will know. The kids have BS detectors that are 100%. But if you are 100% into whatever it is that you're doing, they will feel comfortable getting into it as well. If you can create that environment, then totally you can build programs like or visuals like Joe was saying, like that experience, that now problematic experience of the Caribbean. But I mean, that's something that they walked in, they were like, wow. And that's an environment that you created. And that's wonderful. The other thing I would say is, like, after you do all that work in your schedule, make sure you have free time, because that's also where the memories happen, right? We can't go in and be like, okay, we're going to design amazing memories for you. No, we are facilitating that. So once we have the intention down, and once we're serious, and once we're genuine, make sure you have free time in your schedule so the kids can find the time to make their own memories in that environment. So I guess, am I talking out both sides of my mouth? On one hand, be super intentional and forthright and thoughtful. On the other hand, don't try so hard. How does that sound? Am I being confusing?
Well,
not
Chris,
being
how,
confusing.
how about this reframe, Chris?
Yeah.
How about be intentional and then give kids time to process?
Thank you. I need an editor.
Okay, Joe.
Okay.
I think you also need to look at that from two different perspectives. And I had written down earlier, because I do a lot of planning for this podcast, Beth. I'd written down earlier that the idea of big program things, like I talked about at the beginning, those are memory builders. Those are things that you hope as a camp person become memories for someone else. The reality is we have no idea what some kid is going to remember. We have no idea what moment in the day is going to change somebody's life. We can be intentional. Your intentionality needs to be knowing that every moment could be that moment. And that's going to come in big program moments, like a waterfall in the dining hall, like an elven feast in the middle of the forest, like Sponge Wars for us. But it could also come in the quietness of, a hand on the back at campfire during the final song, or it could come when somebody needs, when a camper is crying and you go up and comfort them, or it could be you congratulating them after they win a game. Any of these moments can be that moment for that person. I think of it like some of my delusional motivational speaker friends, who believe that when they show up at a school, let's say, that they will change the life of everybody in the audience with their talk. And I find it very difficult to believe that I'm going to change everybody at camp's life, right? We often talk during our staff training about this idea that if you affect the life of one child positively this summer, you've done your work, right? Set aside the negative, don't affect them negatively, but the idea of that you can't aim for too high. I think it's like any conferences that we go to as camping professionals. I rarely get the most important thing I learn at a gathering from a session. I often get the most important thing I learn at a gathering from being across the table from someone and talking, or over drinks in the evening, right? Or right, mouse racing in my hotel room. All of those things can bring important things back to us, and create those memories that make that lasting. And so the idea, I wrote down big program memories, but then you also have those small relationship and relational memories, because if we only sell one to our staff, they'll be focused on what Chris was afraid of, which is go, 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 go. We need to do this. We need to create, 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 as opposed to leaving that the space in between is where the magic happens.
I was going to say, Joe, that it's because you hang out with people that go to the sessions, and then when you have those little chats, they tell you pretty much all the things that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's smart planning.
I think that so I'll buy y'all some time to think about this. Like, what are things that go into making great memories? And Joe, I think I appreciate that the goal is that you affect one kid, but I've also seen camps that and I've been lucky enough to get to many camps with lots of programming happening, where they only invest in one moment. This for some sort of like a color games thing or Olympics or whatever, like that they just invest all energy into that. And I think that there's a point in between where we can say we can be intentional in every moment of the day, because every moment of that day could be one of those moments that you're talking about. So I guess my only qualm is that we can always be more intentional is my thinking on that. But what are the elements that create from stuff people have said, it's again feeling noticed. It's surprises. It's things that you would never do at home. I think beautiful moments that create memories at camp or kids being treated with more agency than they are treated at school or at home. So you hear kids or staff, or I mean, I've been a camp director long enough that I've been to a lot of staff weddings and been thanked in their speeches because I taught them how to do a handshake. Like that is, those are things that are small, but that level of intention comes up. So I wonder for you folks, what are things that people might not think of as places to create memorable moments or times to create memorable moments?
When I think about over the past 30 years, like when kids grow up and they come to me and they're like, you know what I remember? When I think about it, usually it falls into a couple of different categories. Usually it's some huge it can be some huge Harry Potter-esque fantasy LARPing, like some sort of creation, like an event or a visual or something. That's probably actually the least common. The middle one is it will be a game, or it'll be usually the middle one is like winning something, like either some success, right, that the kid was a part of. But the number one thing I get told all the time, it's things that I told kids one-on-one when we were having a serious / adult conversation, in that I listened to them, like you mentioned, giving them agency. Like I listened to them and I didn't speak down to them. That has stuck with people. And I have had people in their 30s be like, remember, you said something to me that was really helpful about how to make friends. And I'm like, I did? And there are things that I don't remember, but it meant so much to so many people. So if I was gonna like operationalize that into advice, it's probably, if you're listening to this, hopefully you're already taking this advice, but make sure you listen to kids and really engage them in conversations as people and not kids. I've gotten into really fairly in-depth conversations with 8 and 9-year-olds. And I want to say, like, yes, I'm a social worker, but it's not therapy. You don't have to be a therapist to get there. It's just to be really open and honest. And I think I would say that. I don't want to turn this into a podcast of don't do this. I'm really trying to speak in the positive, but on that tip, be really careful that you are not dismissive, and be also, I want to say, really careful that you have made a plan for all those events and visuals. Please rehearse that, because the one thing that I find kills a memory that's being built is when staff is not prepared. Like staff, you have a really great idea and then it comes out shoddily because you either didn't take the time to rehearse it or you didn't take it seriously enough. It's just like a Hollywood production. That's how we walk into all the stuff that we do at camp. Like we have like complete write-ups, we have rehearsals, and the whole thing. So that's the two things I would say. Like, make sure you rehearse, and also, be genuine. Talk to kids like they're people.
That very thing, Chris, being talked to differently by camp people, like that changed my life. That is why to this day, have a little voice in the back of my head that says, what would Bob Ferris do in this situation? He was my camp director when I was a kid. It is partly because he talked to us, and gave us time and attention. But it's also because when I was 14 and 15 years old, we did full day immersive program experiences that Bob wrote. And when I was 14 years old, we had a full day program. We got woken up kind of rudely, really early, and we were made to do a test. Can you curl your tongue or can you not? And then we're divided into 2 teams, and it was a full day lesson on how people are judged. It's a full day practice going through lived experience of all this. I realize now that we basically were doing full day LARPs of what's going on in the world. And we sat down and debriefed those at 14 years old, with being treated like young adults with smart brains and doing all those things. And those things, of course, stayed with me since. Mm-hmm. So thank you. I totally agree with you on that.
I think the challenge is those people who think they can turn it on and turn it off. And I don't want to be negative either, but staff members who say, I'll stop swearing when I get in front of kids. Well, that's fine. Why don't you just never, right? Like, I'll be nice to the kids when I want, when I need to be. And I'm like, no, that's not, that's your mindset. That's not the mindset that's going to get you far
Right.
ahead here. The idea of turning something on and turning something off, you can't turn on being a camp director. You can't turn on caring and turn off caring,
Yeah.
and compassion and all of those things. What it is you either are or you aren't, or you are or you're trying to fake it, right? Like there's a whole bunch of things, and I think that when we talk about that, it's right. I really strive to give campers things that can't happen or don't happen at home. So from a program end, that's easy because a lot of what we do, and I grew up in a camp that had zero money for any program. There's no canoeing, there's no sailing, there's no ropes, there's nothing. It is just us making up stuff. But like when we take a kid and you show them, I don't even know the name of the weed, the jewel weed that pops open when you put heat on the seeds. The It's the small things that these kids who live in non-farm settings most of the time, non-country settings, are amazed by. I'm still amazed today that adults get fascinated by seeing deer when I see deer all the time. I'm fascinated when I see a deer skull on the ground because a coyote pack has attacked it. And my daughter finds it when she's on a hike by herself and then brings the entire family last week to come and see the deer. I was like, okay,
Is
great.
that dark or is it just me? That's
It's not,
okay.
it's the part of this
It's just
story,
me.
Chris, is
Sorry.
from an education standpoint.
Yeah.
Our son did the same thing when he was 8 years old. He had a little DSi video game console. He was out for a hike. He found a deer that had died. He came home, got his DSi to go take pictures of the dead deer. And me and my wife were like, okay. And it's not even 100 meters from our house. It got hit by a car. He went back every day for 2 weeks and documented the deer decomposing, which at 8 years old, part of what you want to say as a parent is, ooh, like that's gross. But a part of what we said was, yeah, sure. Like, don't touch it, don't lick it, don't eat it. And
And keep sciencing that thing.
you should grow up to be fine. So I think it's this idea that you know it's not just things they can't do at home, but also things that parents would consider almost dangerous, which aren't dangerous at all. Going and seeing a dead deer every day for 2 weeks isn't dangerous in the least, as long as you don't eat it or lick it. But
As long as there's context, right?
yeah.
I think that's the difference between things that happen at camp than things that happen at home. Like I
Like a
think
balloon funeral,
like a
context.
balloon funeral, exactly. Like if you were home and there was like a dead cat out behind elementary school and a whole bunch of kids were there poking it with a stick, like we'd be quick to stop them just because there's no context, there's no sort of superstructure around that. And you create a superstructure for your kids where it's like, okay, we'll go document this, like science this, like get more information. I think that's the key part of that memory. It goes from being dark and creepy to something that's educative and possibly inspiring. It can inspire someone to have a deeper curiosity. It's cool.
Gab, what are important elements for you for setting up situations to make good memories?
I think for me, the number one thing is to talk to our staff about sense of belonging and what does that mean and how can we create a sense of belonging in every single aspect of what we do. And an amazing large big program that has all of the fireworks and everybody involved doesn't necessarily create a sense of belonging for everybody. So it's to look for those places where there's cracks in the program or even in lining up for the dining room outside the dining hall and does everybody feel like they belong while they're waiting for their meal?
Right.
And for me, that's number one. And then number two, to connect to that would be probably, belong to something special. And that sort of, I think that's the constant goal, is to create a space or an experience where you belong, and you belong to something special. And I like what Joe was talking about, that that we do something differently than at home or at school, have those experiences. And I think that you can really walk your staff members through different experiences that happen at school, perhaps, and how can we do that differently in the context of belonging, in the context of it making it be special. And sometimes with our staff or unexperienced staff, they do go to the games or the bigger programs. And if you keep breaking it down to the quote unquote mundane moments and have them workshop that, and sometimes it's just like those life skills that Chris was teaching his campers of, how do you get your campers to acknowledge new campers? How do you get campers to acknowledge the awkward or shy or quiet camper? How do we have those conversations and help them workshop through that? But I think having that context of belonging and belonging to something special. And I think that can really help also with this summer moving forward, whether you ran camp last summer or you couldn't, or you can't run camp this summer. Is there a way that you can still create that experience of belonging?
That, I think, is a great place for us to end this discussion. Thanks for putting a bow on it, Gab. That was wonderful. So therefore, it is time for me to talk about our sponsor, UltraCamp. We want to thank UltraCamp for being with us and supporting the CampHacker podcast. When you think about UltraCamp, they have a question that they want to ask, which I think fits in with this theme in lots of ways. Do you remember why you got into camp in the first place? Because sometimes all the busy work, all of the answering emails, all of the calling to get quotes, all of those things associated with running camp keep us from seeing why we are here, why we're a part of this job. And UltraCamp helps you get back to what you love and why you were involved in camp in the first place. So what does this mean? It means that you are not stressed about budget stuff. With UltraCamp, they have a low minimum entry price. They have clear pricing with no hidden costs. They have some great flexible payment terms and no long-term contracts. So you are able to evaluate the value that UltraCamp offers your camp and make a decision and get out of it if you really need to. Exclusive to the CampHacker podcast listeners, UltraCamp is offering for limited time only, a free setup with UltraCamp. So if you think all the stuff sounds too good to be true, please talk to them. Give them a call. Sign up on their website at summercampsoftware.com/CampHacker, and CampHacker is all one word, because they'd love to show you a future where you can finally have the time to get back to what's really important: looking after kids and making memories. So I want to thank UltraCamp for that. And this gives us a chance to move on to our snack of the week. So
snack. It's snack time. It's snack time.
While we're all making memories, we're changing our tool of the week this week to the snack of the week. So what is your favorite snack, Gabs?
Mine
that you think people should know about?
100%. And it's not a snack, it's a tea, but it's amazing. It's a Bengal spice tea. And when we ran camp 2 years ago, I brought it in because I thought it was amazing. One of my best friends from camp said, I think you're going to love this tea. It's spicy, it's sweet without sugar. I'm fine with sugar. I'm not saying don't have sugar. I'm just saying it doesn't have sugar. And I was like, this is amazing. And I thought I would, get tired of it because I was drinking it so much. Not true. I still love it. And I introduced it to my leadership team, and they loved it so much that we had to purchase like boxes and boxes in our like small town. A grocery store was just out of it. And we've just, every time Jackie, our executive director, finds Bengal spice, she buys it for camp because we are all obsessed with it. It's delicious.
That's excellent. Thanks, Gab.
I have to say, I love that tea.
Yeah.
And I got it last time I was in Ottawa. I found it. and I was like way into it, and I can't find it stateside.
Hmm.
I don't know what that means.
We'll
So-
check that. We'll check the link and you can buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fantastic. It seriously is. I'm like addicted.
So good.
So good.
Keep it going, Chris. What's your snack of the week?
I am so excited about this because if you're anything like me, you have been inside, hiding from a deadly worldwide pandemic. And during that time, I have consumed, if not pounds, possibly metric tons of snacks. And we could do the whole episode on this, but let me keep it cute. There's two things I want to recommend. First of all, Honey Nut Cheerios. Remember Cheerios? You ate them when you were a kid and you loved them. Then you moved on to other things like, as you grew up, you moved on to like, alcohol. But let me tell you something. Honey Nut Cheerios is exactly where it's at. It's the right amount of crunch and it's just enough sweet. It's perfect. And if you're anything like me, 2-3 boxes in a day. That's true. And the other thing I would recommend is chocolate chips. Just buy a bag of chocolate chips. If the person at checkout gives you, it's like, oh, you baking something? Just go, but really you're going home, you're ripping that open and you're just eating them like they were Skittles. So there you go. Don't bother with M&Ms. You don't need a candy shell. Just get to the chocolate. It's what you're there for. So be honest about it and consume an entire bag of chocolate chips. You'll thank me.
There to go.
Love it.
Joe?
That's awesome. My favorite snack right now is from a peanut shop close by to me called Picard's. And they sell wasabi chip nuts, which is a peanut wrapped in a shell that is covered in wasabi, and it's crunchy and it's good and it's tasty and it's just enough spice. Occasionally I get one that'll clear my nostrils, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm just like, great. Costco used to sell wasabi covered cashews at some of the stores in Toronto, and but wasabi peanuts from Picard's, amazing.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for that. My snack is a birthday present from a camp friend. It is bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. And Darby recommended it on vanilla ice cream. I don't believe in vanilla ice cream, but I believe in chocolate ice cream. Chocolate ice cream with bourbon barrel aged maple syrup is going to be a thing that I will consume in a very short period of time. I'm excited for that mix of smoky flavor and chocolate. It'd be great. So there you go. We, if you want to find any of these things or order in the bagel spice tea from Canada, go to see our show notes at camphacker.tv/podcast. You can search for snack of the week, since this will be the only show so far that has snack of the week in the podcast feed. And check that out there. But I want to thank my co-hosts for sharing their great, wonderful camp stories and thinking about and sharing with us the great ideas for how to make camp memorable for our kids. Joe, if people want to get a hold of you to follow up.
If people want to get a hold of me to follow up, they can email me directly, joe@campisbetter.com. Life is good. Camp is better.
Excellent. Cabs?
You can check out where I work at waro.com, ouareau.com. And you can email me at info@waro.com and follow me on Instagram at Gabrielle Rail with 2 L's.
Thank you, Gab. And Chris? You can find Camp Highlight on the interwebs at www.camphighlight.com, on Instagram at Camp Highlight. And you can also reach me, Chris, at Camp Highlight, or on Instagram at PlanetChris1.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you to the three of you for a great show. Again, if people are interested in the notes and want to find our snacks, go to camphacker.tv/podcast. This unusual formatted show might be a good time to also tell you that you can leave us an honest review by going to iTunes and searching for CampHacker, or by using your app and seeing how you can leave a review on whatever podcast app that you use. Thanks for the evening, friends.